Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am your host, Courtney Anderson. Today we have a show that is part of our Myth Warriors series. And so our Myth Warriors series is where we don our offensive weaponry, our spears and our knives and our shield, which is a defensive weapon, although we can use it offensively, and we are going to get out there in the world and we're going to find some of these myths that exist. And we're going to try to ask and work through a rudimentary analysis to determine, is this a myth? Is this concept a myth? Is it a lie, a fallacy, a falsehood? Or does it seem and appear to be that it might be something credible and accurate that I might want to go ahead and adhere to or integrate into my analysis and daily activities? So that's what we're doing. We're sort of looking at ideas and concepts, and we're trying to determine aggressively, assertively, powerfully as a warrior whether or not it's something that's a myth or something that might be accurate, leaning more toward what some might call a truth, or even in some rare occasions a fact. So here is what we have on tap for today. Our specific episode today is dealing with the concept of I am too fill in the blank to find the awesome job of my dreams. Okay. So our topic is I'm too old, young, female, male. I'm too creative. I'm too stuck in my ways. I'm too traditional. I'm too non-traditional. I'm too large. I'm too small. We're just going on and on with all the different things that we are too much of to find the awesome job of our dreams. And this is interesting. I did a companion show about this, a similar concept, but in our personal lives, and when we expand our approach to our 360-degree analysis of our lives, and we talk about our personal relationships, and we did a show trying to figure out if we're too young, old, boring, conservative, large, small, tall, whatever, to find the awesome personal relationship of our dreams. And so what we're doing now is looking at, okay, well, is this concept more accurate or less accurate or equally accurate and valid in terms of our job and professional opportunities? Okay, so let's see. The first part is this idea that someone can be too something, right? Too tall, too smart, too nosy, too quiet, too loud, too old, too young, too feminine, too masculine, too ethnic, too religious, too secular, too, you give me a quality, an idea, an adjective. Okay. One of the things I think that is helpful with all of these sort of lines of analysis that people reflect back on themselves, where they're labeled something, and then they start to use that label as a reason, justification, rationalization for a conclusion. I would argue that the definition of who you are and who I am is different from these external labels. So if I were to go ask, a list of people that I don't know really well, but that have, worked with me in some setting. So maybe they were in the courtroom when I've appeared as a lawyer. Maybe they're somebody that's attended one of my speeches. So, they're not personal friends. They don't know, me personally or anything, but, we've worked together. They've observed my work. Okay. If I were to go ask them a list of, how to describe me, they probably could come up with some perceptions and say that, Courtney is to this and to that. Some people have told me directly, I'm too loud. That's true. I do project. Sometimes in my defense, I'm required to project. People have to hear me. It's kind of why I'm there. So when I speak up in the courtroom or I speak up when I'm giving a speech, I do project. That's what I mean. I use my diaphragm and I'm pushing out my air and I'm magnifying the reach of my voice. But part of it is because that's my job, is to be heard. And if I start to speak and I speak like, hello everyone, I'm so glad to be here, Or, hello everyone, I'm so glad to be here. Well, yeah. The whole point was to be heard. So I am projecting. I'm not going to deny that. And then people have all kinds of things they tell me. I've had people tell me I'm too short, which I don't know how to respond to, because for what is part of my question. The other question is determined by whom? Who gets to measure what is acceptable height, and then the height that's too short or the height that's too small? I don't concur with whoever it is that they have determined has made the decision when they tell me I'm too short, because I feel in my mind I'm just the right size. I'm just the right size right now. I'm not too short at all. And it's the same thing for basically anything else. Largely because these are all perceptions and they're all moments in time. So is that who I am as a person? Does a list of what someone else thinks about me define the capabilities that I have and the possible capabilities I could develop in the future? Is it all just in that? So what everybody else's perception is the reality of who I am? Is that completely accurate? Now, I know some people are thinking, well, wait a minute. In a lot of programs, you're the one that says perception is reality. And I do. The question here is the perception that other people have about me the reality I have about myself? And my answer to that is no, it isn't, because they're two different things. I know myself more. I should. Well, some people don't. But in a lot of programs, I strongly suggest to people you spend some time with yourself and your own thoughts. And I understand that many people, don't have the ability to do so right now, that they're just too much on their plate. But at some point, I would strongly suggest that that's a priority, that you find 10 minutes or 20 minutes as time goes by, 30 minutes a day, where you can just sit and think. Because the most important relationship that you have in terms of these decisions about, the jobs that you're going to do and work and in your life is you need to know yourself, right? And the only way to know yourself is to spend time with yourself. And it may sound silly, and people may think, well, that's stupid. I'm with myself all the time. So who cares if I'm sitting around somewhere thinking quietly in a room by myself? I'm always with me. Well, yeah, you are, but if you're, in an environment, there's other distractions and people and noise and tasks and things you're thinking, then you're not really spending time with yourself. You're physically in the same space as you, but you're not spending any time exploring your ideas, your fears, your interests, your anything, because you're up there with all this other sensory overload and all these other tasks that have taken away your attention. So the ability to invest in spending time with yourself is important. It's incredibly important. It's somewhat analogous to somebody that, who's a professional in like a marriage counselor. And they'll say, how much time, does the couple spend together? And then the couple who's in distress will say, we never spend any time together. All that he or she or we do is work. And it's so sad because now we're just like strangers. You hear that, right? And then the couple who's more healthy will say, oh, well, we have date night all the time. And we go do this together and spend time doing this and that. And even if they have a lot of other responsibilities, if they both work outside the home, if they have a large family, or a lot of pets or, whatever, they in volunteer work, they still make the relationship a priority by spending time with just each other. And that's the same idea with yourself. It sounds kind of odd, I think, to some people, but yes, you have to invest in time with just you, because even though you've been with you since you were, earliest memory, and you're going to be with yourself until the end, in terms of the ceasing of your, thought process and the physical body you currently possess, how well do you know yourself? And you do have to spend time with yourself. And so I strongly suggest that you do that in any format or way that you can, and as much as time as you can, so that you can begin to better understand yourself. And also the wellspring of creativity, which is what is such a buzzword in so many jobs around the world in the knowledge economy, right? So we're in the knowledge economy, which basically the idea is that, what are we selling? We sell ideas. We sell stuff. But a lot of the stuff we sell is created by new ideas. So if you told somebody 15 years ago that they need to go build a social media network, they wouldn't have understood what you said because it didn't make any sense. It didn't exist really. And somebody thought of it and then implemented it in a way where it reached sort of the masses of people around the world. And now people constantly are like, oh, I have to go to my social media and spread this picture I just took on my mobile phone around the world. And I also have to post an update of what I just did. And that's normal to people. Now, I don't know what's going to be like in another 15 years. I'm excited to see what happens because there are people much more talented in these areas, obviously, than I am, as I've created nothing in terms of tech, who create up new stuff. And it's all interesting. The knowledge economy is that's mostly what you sell is knowledge. And if it's something that's not a new technology or a new product, there's this constant innovation of existing products. So yeah, whether you're in marketing or sales, whether you're in retail or pharmaceuticals, it doesn't really matter. The idea is that what's the most important currency is ideas for new or ideas for improved, enhanced, innovation, whatever. That requires thinking, and thinking requires you sitting by yourself. So I would argue that this is an incredibly important, and in fact is the most important part of trying to determine what would be the awesome job of your dreams, or what is the awesome job of your dreams, and then actually accomplishing where you're working in that or something similar to that. You got to sit and think so you could figure it out. The thinking is the most important part, but it's also the hardest part. You have to have the time to do it, quietly, not distracted with other issues, and then you have to have the ability. Ideally, over time, you want to get really consistent about this, like a fitness program. You want to have a sort of a schedule, if you will, of that contemplation, quiet time. And some people combine it with also religious practice. Some people combine it with a spiritual practice or philosophical practice. Whatever it is, but you need to get a schedule where it's not like once a year. You had 4 minutes to think, about anything related to yourself. Ideally, over time, you're going to get into a system where you are able to do this. And if you go back, I love reading about just amazing people throughout human history, or the ones at least that the recorded word was that preserves their information. So you read about people, right, who were just sort of multifaceted, amazing people who were inventors or were discoverers or were rulers or whatever, and they have really unique and idiosyncrasies. Like how do you'll read about, some people only eat the same thing every day because they say they don't want to have to think about, making choices about different, food. And some people wear similar clothes, or they have like one shirt and like 15 different versions of it because they don't want to have to think about, putting clothes together. And some people have, methods, before we had modern electricity, people, how they would do their walk outside and spend time in nature, trying to process thoughts. I mean, go read about anybody that you're interested in any area, healthcare, poetry, the arts, science, anything, and read about how they live their life. Like, how do you get to a point where you create some new concepts? How does that happen? Well, you're spending a lot of time thinking. How do you do that? Some people have a job where they happen to have a job where their job is to think. Maybe they are a research scientist or a professor, but those are few and far between. A lot of people don't have a job like that. They're doing something else, and all of a sudden it's like, but they have the ability, or they find the time, after their kids go to bed, then they would go do their thinking, and that's where they, created their, their poetry. But whatever, I strongly suggest you look and see that the way that you develop your method should be unique, that works for you. Okay, and when you look at other people who have accomplished notable things within, of course, the history that we have a written record of, most of them are a bit unusual. When you read about sort of how they went about their day, how they went about their thinking time, but they needed the thinking because that's where all the things that they were noted for came from. They had to have the ability to come up with that stuff. So the encouragement there is that you make yourself a priority, you get on a schedule, and that you have the confidence to just do what works for you. I mean, if your thinking time is, at 2 a.m., fine. If your thinking time is while you're in the bathtub, fine, whatever. But just do it. And the results of your ability to invest in yourself and to really begin to explore the recesses of your mind is going to begin to give you a better assessment of whether or not it's an accurate statement that you're to fill in the blank to find the awesome job of your dreams, or that if this might be something that's not true, a lie, a myth. So when we look at the idea, that was all sort of looking at the idea of I am, right? of who am I? Am I what other people say I am? Or is there something more to me? I would argue there should be more to you because other people haven't been with you your whole life like you have. And you also have the ability to go deep into your own, cognitive experience, which they can't. So, yeah, there should be more to you than what other people think of you. Does what other people think of you matter in the terms of how other people perceive you is their reality? Yeah, that is real. I talk about that in all these other programs, right? Everything from that's why we dress for success to that's why we spend all this time thinking through the decisions we make in the workplace. So it's real, but it's not comprehensive. It's like watching one frozen screenshot in a 3-hour movie. I mean, that one frozen screenshot is accurate because it was part of the 3-hour movie, but it doesn't tell you the whole story. And in fact, it might be so misleading because that one screenshot may be dealing with an issue that wasn't even part of the main story in the movie. You don't know the movie from looking at that one still screenshot. And it's the same thing with somebody who saw you at work one time. That was one little screenshot in your whole experience. That could have been the greatest day of your life, could have been the worst day of your life. Nobody knows but you. So that doesn't define you, but that's part of how you represent it. So just like the movie director and the editor will understand that screenshot is in there, right? So you don't want to put anything in there that's, awful or jarring or inappropriate. Although you always read people hide little things in screenshots. They call them Easter eggs, right? Like, oh, what was hidden in that? For fun, for super fans. But they still understand that it's out there, that the world does perceive it. It's part of the overall, 3-hour experience. It's the same thing in your life. You got this whole experience. So, yeah, you're going to have great days. You're going to have horrible days. You're going to have days people saw you at work and you were not what you can be for whatever reason. That doesn't define the totality of the whole experience, but it is part of it. So when we're looking at the idea of being to anything for your awesome job of your dreams, again, we're feeding into this idea that jobs are determined by criteria that's related to these sort of external perceptions, right? I'm too, quote, young, I'm too, quote, old, I'm too, quote, wide, I'm too, quote, skinny, I'm too, quote, whatever. And let's talk about that for just a minute or two. I've got a whole series, we do a whole bunch of programs about the specifics of legal rights and human resources and things of that nature. And so, in general, I would say this. Does it happen in real life in every part of the world, including the U.S., Canada, Europe, everywhere, that people go and hire somebody for a great job? Great meaning a job you would have liked, it would have paid money you would have enjoyed, or it would have provided opportunities you would have enjoyed, and they hire those people literally based on things that have nothing to do with the job, like their size or their perceived age. Does that happen? Yes. Should that happen? No. Why? Again, when you hire somebody for a job, what are you hiring them for? And sometimes I ask this question and people say, well, I don't know. I've never hired anybody. I'm not an executive. I don't know. And then I'll say, well, have you ever hired like a babysitter or somebody to help with your lawn mowing or anything? And they'll be like, well, yeah, I did hire a babysitter. Or I did hire somebody to help that one time with the yard. Okay, then you've hired somebody. Every time you actually go out and engage in some commerce, you drop your stuff at the dry cleaning or you go to a certain restaurant to order something, you're also hiring them technically, that business, to provide a service for you. Right? So one time I took my stuff to a dry cleaner. I don't even remember the name of the dry cleaner. This was a long time ago. And it doesn't matter. But I took my stuff to the dry cleaner. So let's say I took, 5 things, right? Like I don't remember, but let's just say 5 things, like a dress and, some shirts and some pants. So if I took 5 things to the dry cleaner, I'm hiring, okay, that dry cleaner to perform a certain duty. What is my main expectation for the entity that I've hired or the people that I've hired at the dry cleaner? Well, if I turn in 5 things, I want 5 things back, right? I don't want to turn in 5 things and get 4 things or 1 thing or 0 things. That means some of my things are gone. The other thing is I would like them to come back cleaner, preferably, totally clean, but cleaner than I dropped them off. So I want to get back the same amount of stuff I gave these people, and I want it to be ideally cleaner, which is why the business is called cleaning. when I went to this one dry cleaner place, I took, 5 things. I don't remember the exact number. But when I got there and got my things back, even though I had a little piece of paper that showed I dropped off 5 things, they only had like 4 things. They were missing one of my things. And then it became this long discussion where they're like, well, are you sure? And I'm like, well, yeah, here's my ticket from when I dropped off the stuff that you print out on your own little, business thing, give to me to show me how many things I dropped. And it says 5. And now you're showing me 4 things. Where's my other, item? And then it wasn't awesome. And the people, were, well, maybe we mistyped it. And I'm thinking, well, really? It's possible. But then it's like a big conspiracy. You had some kind of conspiracy to trick me into saying that there were 5 things and there were only 4. For some reason, now I'm back here. I'm aware that there were only 4 things, but I'm lying to you to try to get the extra thing. Like, I don't want anybody else's dirty clothes. I don't even want anybody else's clean clothes. I want my stuff. Okay. Anytime you hire somebody, what do you get? What do you want? You want results. That's what you're hiring them for. Whether it's you're dropping yourself at the dry cleaner, you're going to a restaurant, you expect the people to bring you the food you ordered. Always makes us angry, right? When we ask for one thing and they give us something else. That's not what I asked for. Depending on part of the world we're in, the culture, we'll say it in different different tones. But we want them to do whatever that thing is that they said they're going to do. What's their job? It's the same thing at a business. Ideally, if I'm hiring somebody, to be a salesperson, then they need to sell stuff. And I usually will have an idea of how much stuff they should sell based on what the prior salespeople have done or the other salespeople do or what the other businesses in my industry do. And those might be quotas or expectations I set for them. And it's the same thing if they're a medical doctor. I have an expectation of what kind of quality of medical care they're going to give to my patient. If they are a bus driver, there's an expectation that they're going to drive the bus in a quality way. So they're not using drugs or alcohol while they're driving the bus. We always see these stories around the world, right, where people die or injured because the bus driver or the train driver, the boat, captain, is inebriated. Really? So when you're hiring somebody, what are you hiring them for? You're hiring them to do the thing that the job requires, just basically. So what are people hiring you for? Ideally, they're hiring you, can you do the thing? Can you dry clean the clothes? Can you drive the bus? Can you sell the cars? Whatever the job is. Does it happen that people go out and instead of hiring somebody who's a good or proven or, potentially effective salesperson or has a good, clean driving record, that instead they go hire their cousin or they go hire, somebody who they think is really romantically attractive and potentially they hope would date them? Does that happen? Yes. Why is that not a good idea? Why did I say a few minutes ago that I immediately said you shouldn't do that? Well, one, because you're not going to get the outcome you want. The outcome you want is the best quality of dry, cleaned clothes. So I have the number returned that people dropped off. I have them at the highest level of cleanliness, and I can do it in a good turnaround time. The reason why it's important is because there's always competitors. In any industry, you have competitors. And if your stuff, maybe somebody else could return the same amount of clothes, but they're not as clean. Or maybe they return the same amount of clothes, but took them, twice as long as what somebody else could do, and still deliver the same level of cleanliness. The customer is going to take their money somewhere else, and it's the same thing with everything else in life. I never went back to that dry cleaner who only gave me, 4 things when I turned in 5 because I was so mad. I don't, whatever it was, that they lost or whatever happened. It's not even the point. It's just the idea that they didn't even immediately say, "Hey, we're sorry. What can we do to fix it?" If they'd done that, actually, it might have made me give them another chance. But they just acted like, I was, lying or something. I mean, they got defensive immediately. I mean, it was just ridiculous. Everybody makes mistakes. All you have to do is admit it and say you're sorry and try to fix it. But they didn't do that. So they were fired as my dry cleaner, and I went and got somebody else. Now, does one business, typically the larger they are, people always say, well, they don't care about me. They're a big company. Okay, yeah, and your one individual act of firing them as your, dry cleaner or cell phone provider or whatever, they may not care. The aggregate. But I'll tell you what, though. The same thing that made you leave because they didn't do what they're supposed to is going to make other people leave. And when that happens consistently for a long enough period, they will be out of business. They ran themselves out of business. That's why when they go hire, their cousin or they hire somebody they think is really good looking, it's eventually, there's nobody else that they're hiring that's really qualified for the work at a high level, they lose customers, and eventually they'll lose so many that they can't have a sustaining business. They're not a going concern, as they say in business theory. They can't keep it open because there's not enough income coming in to cover their expenses. So, yeah, if you want to destroy a business, then hire people who are unqualified for reasons that have nothing to do with the job. one, it just doesn't work for your business. The other problem, though, is in many parts of the world, there are laws that prohibit this, that say you have to hire, if you're going to really, be in our country, you have to follow our rules, and our rules are that you have to hire people that are, like for legitimate jobs based on their legitimate qualifications. And you can't just pick people who are, that you like, because it leads down the road of people like certain genders, or like certain colors of people, or certain religious groups, and then all these other people can't get jobs, even though they're really talented. So the argument here is there's justification across the board, long term, not to make these really ineffective business decisions and hire people based on illegal in many parts of the world and ineffective everywhere reasons. It's just not logical. So it happens. Do I sit around somewhere thinking I'll never get the job of my dreams because somebody won't hire me because I'm too short, and somebody won't hire me because I'm too loud, and somebody won't hire me because my skin color is too dark, and somebody else might not hire me because of whatever? Yeah, it's possible, and I'm sure it happens. But there's nothing I could do about that. I wouldn't get those jobs anyway, right? And if those people want to go ahead and make bad decisions for their business, where they're either violating the law, and will get eventually caught for that, and they're making bad business choices so their business will suffer, then that's on them. And as a lawyer, of course, I've taken many of the lawsuits, law cases where I represent the person against the company that is refusing to do the right thing, and the business decision that helps their business, and they're hiring people on legal reasons, and then I feel that personal, vindication of taking action to make sure people stop doing this. So I'm not saying that there aren't, depending on where you are in the world, somewhat rare or less rare occasions where people don't hire people based on what they can do in a job, but and I'm doing all I can to try to change that as an educator, as a lawyer, as someone who's sharing information around the world. But on the other hand, that's not going to stop me from getting out there and getting my dream job. And the reality is that most employers in the world, especially in the last couple of years, as technology accelerates. And every time you have technology, then you have all new challenges. How do you market it? What are the legal challenges to it? It's just it requires more and more intellectual capital. You need more cognitive ideas to support anything that's new or different or innovative. And so there's just like the international race, right, for that brain power. And you've got nations that are doing everything in their power to keep people that are, from their nation from not leaving, that are really talented intellectually. They don't want a brain drain, because when they take those ideas somewhere else, then the other country will benefit from it, and not that country. So there's incentives in this. This to me actually is one of the things that's the most fascinating part of life, and that I hope I can live as long as possible so I can sort of see how it all shakes out. But there are many nations in the world that are completely investing in education, social services, support, because they understand that the knowledge economy will be won by people with most knowledge. I mean, it sounds kind of crude that way, but they get it. And then there's other parts of the world where I visit and work, and people don't seem to be at all motivated. But I don't think they understand what their competitors see, and the amount of resources they're putting into, we're going to get our knowledge economy as strong and powerful as we can because we're just going to create more knowledge workers. How do you do that? Strong childhood nutrition and family support and social services and access to health care and all this kind of good stuff. You're going to get the people to be in the optimal position. If you have people that are starving, malnutrition, in some sort of horrible situation, then no, you're not going to be able to get the best brain power out of them from a sort of a crude return on your investment. But if they're well fed and safe and have support and resources, you're going to get the best out of each individual. And so when you talk about your to anything, again, you define you. The other thing is you define what makes, in your mind, an awesome job of your dreams. So you could be, a surgeon, but you really want to work with horses. Okay. You could be a dog trainer, but your dream is to, be a bus driver. You could be a bus driver, but your real dream, is to be a pastry chef. It doesn't matter. But if you can dream it and own that dream and think to yourself, by owning it, I mean you say it to yourself, I really enjoy pastries. I'd love if I could just make pastries all the time. And who cares what anybody else says? One of the things that cracked me up was years ago. I was working as a lawyer full time, right? And so then I've told the story in other programs. I go and decide for some, I was unhappy basically, and so I thought I'm going to see if there's anything else I can do. And so I found one little internet listing looking for a lawyer to go to. I think it was Minneapolis area for a couple of days, like 3 or 4 days, and give a program, a seminar on sort of legal issues. And so I went to Kansas City, and I auditioned for this company for this little one-off opportunity, and they said okay. And so I went to Minnesota, and I gave it was 4 days. So I went and gave the 4-day program in Minnesota. And so when I did that, it sounded silly. And anybody that I told, like, I'm going to go give a seminar, as a speaker, people sort of laughed at me. And then fast forward a couple of months, and I realized I really like that other, speaking, and I want to learn how to be a professional speaker, and I want to learn all I can about that business. I was still, a lawyer, and I went to court one day, and one of the lawyers were sitting in a room, and it was a criminal case, and one of the lawyers started to make fun of me, and he said something like, "Oh, are you giving your motivational speeches still?" And he's like laughing, and there's 8 other people in the room, and they're kind of laughing too. And here's the thing: he could laugh all day. He was making fun of me because it sounds stupid to go say you're going to be a motivational speaker when you have your own law firm. Or it sounded stupid to him. It didn't sound stupid to me because why not? I can dream and I can do things. And I didn't know how to do that job well, so it took me years before I transitioned to doing speaking, and then started to scale back my law practice. But I thought I could try it, and even if I failed at it, I thought it was interesting and fun, so why not? So people laugh at you. Who cares? It's your dream job, not theirs. More importantly than that, it's your life. I mean, so if I didn't want to be laughed at, and I go and I keep working in law, and I never try other things, and I'm still there, 15 years later, and I hate my job, and I'm mad at the world, what would be the point? What do I win? Why not go out and see what other interests you have? And you define you. And yes, some people may say things to you or have reactions that aren't really supportive, but that's their issue. That's not your issue. This is your life. It's your dream. It's your work. Go do it. And as they all, that cliche, nothing succeeds like success. True, so maybe you'll succeed and that quote will show them, or you'll fail catastrophically. But honestly, who cares? It's your life. Why not try it? And if you don't like it or you fail at it or it turns out it was horrible, go back and do the other thing you were doing or go learn some other thing. I beg you to take responsibility for your own professional choices. There's nobody to blame. And before I went out and started to try different things in a bolder way, I would have been the biggest cynic and said to somebody, "Oh, that's just a bunch of motivational garbage." But once I started trying different things that I enjoyed and spreading my professional wings, I learned that, yeah, you can. Why not? As always, you can come to CourtneyAnderson.com and join in. And I, again, appreciate you so much for spending time with me today.